you bitch!
Hello everybody, it's Xeno Enthusiast yet again, and I'm here with another new What If, and it is called, What If a Xenomorph Fell Underground? Now if you're not sure what I mean by that, I basically mean the Undertale kind of underground, and if you don't know what Undertale is, then I recommend you either get the game, or at least watch some YouTube videos about it. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into this what if. The year is 20XX. A xenomorph hive has recently been wiped out apart from a single drone. This drone has fled the area to a mountain where it felt like it would be safe. There was also something about the mountain that drove the xenomorph towards it. The xenomorph reached the top of the mountain and looked around. There wasn't that much to see apart from the city it fled from. So the xenomorph continued onwards until it fell down a deep opening and landed headfirst on a bed of flowers. Although the flowers did break its fall, the xenomorph still suffered minor head trauma, and with this trauma awoke the sentient potential inside the xenomorph's brain. After shaking off the pain and sitting up, the xenomorph thought to itself, "Where am I?" It then got up and looked around. It was dark, apart from the sunlight beaming down on the patch of flowers the xenomorph had landed on. As it continued to look, it saw a doorway. Seeing as it didn't really have the strength to crawl up the walls back to the opening, it decided to walk through. It walked down a hall and met another doorway and walked through. It saw another patch of flowers as well as yet another doorway. It continued walking forward until something odd happened. A flower quickly sprang up from the ground, making the xenomorph stop in its tracks. "Howdy, I'm Flowey. Flowey the flower." The flower gave the xenomorph a smile as it stood there. The xenomorph thought in its head, Did that flower just talk to me?" The xenomorph stared down at the flower in confusion and curiosity. Not much of a talker, are ya?" The xenomorph slightly shrugged. "Oh, no matter." You're new to the underground, aren't ya? You must be so confused." The xenomorph nodded quickly. "Well, you look like you need a new best friend to show you how things work down here." The xenomorph tried its best to make a smile, and succeeded. Flowey thought in his head, "Oh my god, why was that so adorable?" Flowey shakes this thought off and continues on. "Alright, here we go. The xenomorph feels weird as things start changing. The whole world around it is shifting." "Alright, let's get started," said Flowey as he was now black and white. The xenomorph stood there, starstruck at the sudden change in the world. Flowey brings out the xenomorph's soul and is very confused by what he sees. What the? The xenomorph tilts its head in confusion, then looks down to see a heart. The xenomorph then tries to poke it, but its claws just passes right through it. Now, Flowey was confused for 3 reasons. 1, the xenomorph's name was literally Xenomorph, which was weird to him. Reason 2 is because of the xenomorph's LV. It was already 20, which surprised Flowey and made him scared of the xenomorph. And the final reason was because the xenomorph's soul was upside down like a monster soul, but instead of being white, it was a dark red. Not determination, but a new soul trait that Flowey had not seen before. He looked up at the xenomorph and spoke. "Your soul is not like the other monsters I've met. Have you absorbed a human soul?" The xenomorph shrugged as if to say, "I don't know. This is the first time I'm hearing of all this. Flowey stares at the Xenomorph for a moment, thinking, when he suddenly shakes his head. Flower head. Can you really consider it a head? Anyways, whatever. We can get back to that later. What I'm more worried about is, what the hell is up with your LV? The Xenomorph shrugs. Wait, do you not know what LV is? The Xenomorph shook its head. Flowey sighed and got ready to explain. Basically, LV stands for love, and love stands for levels of violence. It essentially gauges someone's capacity to hurt others without remorse. You've killed people, haven't you? Flowey's tone slightly turned sinister as he asked the question. The Xenomorph stood there, staring at Flowey. It then forced out, I had reasons. Oh, so you can talk. Flowey is cut off as the Xenomorph starts coughing violently. After a second of this, the Xenomorph then coughs up what looks to be blood in Flowey's view. But it's not like the blood he's seen coming out of normal beings. It's a weird greenish yellow color. Hey, are you okay? The Xenomorph nodded slightly. Huh. Is your throat, like, hurt? The Xenomorph shrugged. Huh. Well, you seem like a nice monster, so I thought as your new best friend, I should give you some advice. The Xenomorph tilted its head. Some monsters down here might attack you because of your appearance, which is understandable because, 1, you're kind of scary looking, and 2, you're the first of your kind to be underground. As far as I know, at least. So, if I'm not around with you, then be careful with other monsters. The Xenomorph nodded. Flowey then ended the quote-unquote battle, because you couldn't really call it a battle, they just talked. And the world went back to normal, with the Xenomorph frantically looking around. So since we're friends now, I think we should... Flowey is interrupted by the sound of fire. He turns around to see a goat throwing a fireball at him. Flowey braces himself for the attack until the Xenomorph blocks it with its hand. Oh dear, I didn't mean to hit... The Xenomorph then gets down on all fours in front of Flowey. It rears its tail up like a scorpion and hisses at her. The goat, or as we all know her as, Toriel, takes a step back in fear as the Xenomorph does this. Flowey is shocked that this creature protected him from attack. Hey, calm down. It's okay. And yes, if you couldn't tell by now, I'm making Flowey friendly towards the Xenomorph in this what if. The Xenomorph turns its head to face Flowey. It then turns back towards Toriel and relaxes. I'm sorry, sir, ma'am. I was not aiming for you. I was aiming for that thing. It has a habit of attacking others. The Xenomorph spoke. I don't care. He's my friend. Torio's confused by this, and before she can ask about it, Xenomorph starts coughing again. I just wanted to take a moment, and even though I've probably said this in a lot of my other videos, I am sorry for my voice acting. It is terrible. Anyways, the Xenomorph starts coughing again. It again coughs up its acidic blood. The Xenomorph's HP then went down from 99 to 78 from the time it coughed up blood, then got hit by Toriel's attack, and then coughed up blood again. I'm so sorry for hurting you. If you'll allow me, I can make it up to you at my home where you can get some rest and food. The Xenomorph thinks for a moment, and then nods in agreement, feeling rather hungry. Good, now follow me. Toriel turns around and walks away. The Xenomorph then stands up and looks towards Flowey, who is looking up at the Xenomorph. The Xenomorph then cracks a sinister smile on its face. Just what are you thinking of doing? The Xenomorph then reaches its hands towards Flowey. The Xenomorph, instead of harming Flowey like he thought the creature was going to do, scoops up Flowey inside of the dirt. What are you doing? The Xenomorph starts walking off. Don't tell me you're bringing me with you! The Xenomorph looks down at Flowey in its hands and smiles. Flowey then sighs. Whatever. And with that, the Xenomorph walks off after Toriel, with Flowey in its hands. The Xenomorph catches up with Toriel. Her expression is less than pleased when she sees the Xenomorph holding Flowey. The Xenomorph notices this and eyelessly glares at Toriel. She feels a chill down her spine as the Xenomorph does this and starts walking a bit faster. Since I don't really care much for them, we're just gonna skip the puzzles and get right to her house. Well, here we are. Home sweet home. The Xenomorph looks at it and forces out, "It's nice." Well, thank you. I try my best to keep it tidy just in case I have visitors. Although I was not exactly expecting company today, so it may be a bit messy inside. Toriel opens the door and welcomes the Xenomorph in. They walk into the living room, and the Xenomorph puts Flowey in a vase and sets him on a table, and then sits down at the table. Now, if you don't mind me asking, which do you prefer, cinnamon or butterscotch? The Xenomorph tilted its head in confusion. Do you not know what I'm talking about, dear? The Xenomorph shook its head. Oh, well, I'll be back. She heads into the kitchen. The Xenomorph looks down at Flowey and studies him. Thinks, how strange. A flower that can move, think, and talk. Though I guess I'm not really one to talk. Toriel then walks back into the living room and sits down in a chair across from the Xenomorph. Oh, where are my manners? I am Toriel, caretaker of the ruins. She held out her hand to the Xenomorph. The Xenomorph took it, and they shook hands. Now, if you wouldn't mind, what's your name? The Xenomorph stayed silent and stared down at the table after she asked. Is something wrong, dear? Flowey then chimed in. I don't think it has a name. But surely you saw its name when you encountered it in battle. I did. But I don't think that it's their name. What do you mean? Well, it said Xenomorph. I don't think that's its actual name. I think it's just what its species is called. The Xenomorph nodded at Flowey, telling him he was right. Oh, well, that most certainly will not do. Would you mind if I tried to come up with a few names for you? The Xenomorph nodded, slightly excited. A few moments passed as Toriel started giving names. The Xenomorph declined all of them because they all sounded rather uninteresting. She was giving names like Sal, Alan, Sam, Jeff, names like that. After a few minutes of Toriel giving out names and the Xenomorph declining them, Flowey suddenly cleared his throat. I have a name for them. Why don't we just simply call them Xeno? I guess that would make things easier. What do you think? Toriel looked towards the Xenomorph. The Xenomorph looked down at the table, thinking about the name. It then looked up to the two of them and nodded and smiled. Great, then we'll call you Xeno. The Xenomorph was happy with his new name. Toriel suddenly handed it a book. Why don't you open it up and read while we wait for the pie? The Xenomorph opened the book to a page that was about the middle of the book. The Xenomorph then stared down at the strange scribbles and turned its head in confusion. It recalled that it had seen the humans looking at something similar, but it could never understand what it was. Toriel noticed its confusion. Oh dear, do you not know how to read? Xenomorph looked at her. The Xenomorph looked at her with its head still tilted. It then shrugged. I'll take that as a yes. How about after we eat, I'll teach you how to read and write? The Xenomorph shrugged again, not really knowing what she was talking about. I'll take that as a yes as well. Toriel then walks into the kitchen. She then brings out a pie. Toriel puts a plate with a slice of the pie in front of the Xenomorph. The Xenomorph, despite being sentient, had no table manners whatsoever and picked up the pie off the plate, devouring it in mere seconds. Toriel was a bit shocked by this. The Xenomorph sat there, then made a weird cooing sound, showing it was happy. To the Xenomorph, this was the best non-meat item it had ever eaten. And the first. You idiot. You're supposed to eat it with the fork, not pick it up and swallow it whole. The Xenomorph looked at Flowey, then looked at Toriel and said, "Sorry." "Oh, don't worry, dear. It's quite all right." Toriel gave Flowey a glare, which he averted his eyes from. The Xenomorph saw this, but decided it was best to not do anything for the moment. After they had finished, Toriel started teaching the Xenomorph how to read and write. The Xenomorph was having fun, learning, but at times it could see Toriel giving Flowey menacing glares. The Xenomorph then suddenly heard a voice in its head, seeing how Toriel glares at your new and only best friend, fills you with spite. The Xenomorph, who had been forced to read the entire English dictionary, knew what spite meant, and it fully agreed with the voice. So after a few hours, the Xenomorph is now at an advanced level of reading and a slightly above basic level of writing. The Xenomorph is really happy when it suddenly feels the joyful atmosphere of the room disappear. The Xenomorph looks at Toriel, who is glaring right at them. "I didn't want to bring this up because you seem like a nice person, but I think it's time I finally get an answer. Why is your LV so high?" The Xenomorph stared down at the table when she asked the question. They don't really like to talk about it. I wasn't asking you, Flower." The Xenomorph instantly eyelessly glared at Toriel again. "Right. Sorry. I'm just on edge." The Xenomorph decided it was time to tell someone. So the Xenomorph wrote on paper. It wrote everything it knows, all about its species and the humans. After it was done writing, and Toriel and Flower had read it, Toriel stood up, fire in her hands. "You monster! You and your species take the lives of innocent humans." The Xenomorph jumps up, grabs Flowey's vase, and dodges a fireball. "Quick, head downstairs. There's an exit," Flowey said with panic in his voice. The Xenomorph wrapped its tail around Flowey's vase, and Flowey himself, keeping him secure in the vase. It then got on all fours and crawl/sprinted down the stairs and all the way to the large door. Then rammed itself against the door and forced it open. It then crawl/sprinted again through. It got up on two legs and closed the door. Toriel had to take a moment to register what had happened, which gave the Xenomorph plenty of time to start coughing and hacking. It set Flowey's vase on the ground. Hey, are you okay?" The Xenomorph then coughed up a slimy black resin that quickly covered the door and hardened, making breaking through it impossible unless you were fine with breaking down the door. "Ew. Well, that happened." The Xenomorph wiped its mouth off, picked up Flowey's vase, and walked towards the final doorway, then entered a snow area. It noticed how cold it was, and was rather uncomfortable with the temperature, but decided to continue regardless. It saw a stick on the ground. It looked at it for a second and then continued walking, stepping over it. A few feet later, they heard the sound of a stick snapping. What was that? The Xenomorph and Flowey turned to look, but saw nothing apart from the stick being snapped in half. The Xenomorph, not really caring, continued to walk until it came across a bridge with really wide wooden bars. The Xenomorph stopped to examine the bridge and the bars. "What are you doing? Keep moving!" Sorry. The Xenomorph ignored Flowey and kept looking at the bridge. The Xenomorph then heard a voice. "Buddy, don't you know how to greet a new pal? Turn around and shake my hand." And that, everyone, is where I'm going to be leaving this What If off. And oh boy was that long. Oh well, I hope you enjoyed it regardless. And if you want a new part to this what if, then get this video to at least 15 likes. Alright? I hope you have a good day or night, and this is Xeno Enthusiast, signing off.